Hello and welcome. As you can tell by the DOS prompt on the screen, I'm about to play a very old video game. This game actually came out in 1986. I'm using a DOS emulator called DOSBox to play this game. So let me start it up and then I'll talk some more about this game. The game is called The Scoop. The DOS version came out in 1989, which is why it says 89 at the bottom instead of 86 like I said a second ago. One quick note, usually when I do these videos, I record myself talking as I'm playing the game, but in this case, I didn't really like the way it came out. I was very quiet and not interesting at all, so I decided to re-record all the audio. If you're wondering what happened to the game's sound effects, there really aren't any. There's a little clicking sound when your main character walks, which gets annoying really fast, and otherwise there's not any sound at all, so don't feel like you're missing out on anything by me cutting out the original audio. So this game is based on a story written by famous novelist Agatha Christie and several others. So you'll notice at the bottom of the screen it says to enter the password from page 12. This is an old form of copy protection the games had back then, where if you had downloaded this game off the internet, you wouldn't have a physical copy of the manual, and you wouldn't have the password that's on the page, so you wouldn't be able to play the game. Fortunately, this is cracked because I lost my copy of the manual long time ago, so I wouldn't be able to look it up. So I just have to hit enter and start the game. Before we begin, I want to jump into the game's backstory, because when you actually bought the game, it came with a fake newspaper front page that explained to you basically what you need to know before you jump into the game. We start off a couple days after the murder of a young woman named Geraldine Tracy. She had been found stabbed to death in her home, but the murder weapon is missing. So in this game, you play a reporter who works for a rather run-down newspaper company, and you're hoping that you're the one who can get the scoop on the murder. Start new game. So you can choose if you want to play as a male or female, which is actually kind of cool because you didn't get that choice a lot back in the 80s. I decided that I'm going to name my character Mr. Anderson, and I promise I won't do the Agent Smith thing again. As you can imagine, this game has a lot of reading in it, so here we go. Ever the optimist, you leap up the Daily Courier steps, hoping that your editor, Mr. Rightwell, might have a lead on the Jumbles murder case. So let's go over the controls. Left and right to walk, up brings you through doors. The spacebar brings you into the action menu. Pause actually unpauses the game. Look describes your surroundings, while search is more detailed and tells you if there's any items in the area that you can pick up. Once you pick up an item, you can use examine to check it out. At the top of the screen, you'll notice a day and time. That's because time actually passes while you're performing actions, and certain events occur at certain times, so you got to make sure you're there when they happen. So if for some reason you need a little bit of time to pass, you can press wait to jump forward a bit. Take, obviously, is to pick up an item. Drop is if you want to let go of it, and inventory shows you a list of everything that you're holding. Speak is to talk with somebody in the room with you, and then observe is if there's two people in a room and they're talking to each other, you can listen in on their conversation. Sleep is, you have to sleep eventually, and then menu will take you to, like, saving and loading and all that kind of stuff. And in certain screens you can travel, which means you go from one place to another by taxi or by bus or by train. So, with all that out of the way, let's go talk to the boss, Mr. Rightwell. Hey boss, what's up?
Mr. Anderson, there's been a corpse found by a porter in a phone box down at Victoria Station. Better get down there to see what's happened.
Well, off I go to Victoria Station. So my only two options right now are Victoria Station and Old Mill Street, which is where I live. Obviously, I need to head down to Victoria Station to find out about this body that was found there.
Thought you might like to know I just took Mr. Oliver down to Victoria Station. He told me someone got killed in a phone box there. Seemed a bit excited about it, he did. Funny the way some folks get a thrill about murder.
Here I am in Victoria Station. Now, I believe I mentioned this earlier, but I played this game a few times before when I was young, so there are a few things that I remember from playing before. For instance, I remember that you can find an item outside of Victoria Station, so let me go look for it right now. After unwadding many scraps, you discover a yellow slip torn from a notebook. Johnson's note is here. Okay, now let's go inside the station. Inside the station, we have a Bobby and a ticket taker. Neither one of them are particularly interesting, so I'm just going to walk past them. Now here we have something a bit more interesting. Usually when two people are standing still and looking at each other like that, it means they're talking. So we can listen in on their conversation. Oh, and there's a dead body on the floor. An indelible stain of recently spilled blood serves as a gruesome reminder of the recent murder.
The dead man was my colleague, Andrew Johnson. He was working on the Jumbles murder story. He found the weapon used in the crime. Mr. Hemingway, the news editor, instructed him to bring it back to the office so that the Morning Star would have an exclusive story. You've got your story all right. Judging from the wound, I'd say Johnson was killed with the same instrument that did in Geraldine Tracy. His pockets have been rifled and the weapon has been taken. Did he describe it when he called in this evening? He described it as some sort of jade-headed dagger. Thought he'd seen it somewhere before. I can't imagine anyone wanting to do Johnson in. He was a rather bland fellow, not enough to him to arouse strong emotion in anyone. Were there any other witnesses or other pieces of evidence? There are no witnesses. There couldn't have been a struggle or 100 people would have seen it. The porter discovered the body as he was sweeping by. The only evidence is the out-of-order sign left by the murderer.
May I examine it?
You can bet it'll be a while before the yard cooperates with your paper. And you can tell Hemingway that the next time he instructs a reporter to conceal valuable evidence, he'll see the inside of Scotland Yard like he's never seen it before.
And, properly chastised, Mr. Dennis Oliver leaves. I have a choice here. I can talk to Inspector Smart or I can talk to Oliver. Since Oliver looks like he's leaving, I should probably try talking to him first. You can see here the conversation options are what's on your mind, tell me about, where were you, and show. I'll get into more detail on those as we go through them.
I can't believe Johnson got it this way. Who'd want to do him in?
Tell me about yourself.
I'm the top crime reporter for the Morning Star. Now that Johnson's gone, I'm working on this Jumbles case just as I should have been from the start.
Just a quick note, the Jumbles case is the murder of Geraldine Tracy that I was talking about earlier. Now I'm going to choose tell me about someone.
I'd like to find out who this Tracy is, and I bet I do before you.
In case you haven't picked it up, he works for a rival newspaper.
I have to admit I'm a little peeved Hemingway sent Johnson on that Jumble story. I'm his best man, everyone knows that. Still, he's the boss, and he's the finest boss I've ever had. Excuse me, but I must leave now.
As you can see, when someone says they have to leave now, that means they're moving into another room. Wait a second, come back here, I'm not done talking to you. Okay, now, where was I?
Seems Mrs. Tracy was digging gold, got tired of her first find, and took up with another quick as she could. She's paid the price in full.
Now on to where were you? There's two options for this. Monday night, which is when Johnson was killed, and Saturday night, which is when Tracy was killed.
I worked in the office all of Saturday, then dined with Miss Blackwood at the Piccadilly Palace. I accompanied Miss Blackwood home and then returned to my flat around 10 o'clock.
Well, I have a new name now. Let me ask him who this Miss Blackwood is.
Why do you want to know about her? It's no secret, she's my girl. Just because Johnson was fond of her doesn't mean the feeling was mutual. Beryl is as true to me as a woman can be. I shouldn't doubt that one day we'll be married.
Now I might as well ask him about Monday night, which technically is right now.
I arrived from Newcastle at 8:10. I called into the office. Redmond told me about Johnson's find. I took a long walk to clear my head. I checked in at about 10:30 and set about writing the article Johnson had called in. At 10:40, we got the call from Victoria Station. I raced down and found Johnson dead.
All right, now let me ask him about this Redmond guy.
Redmond's a real hard worker. Seems the job's all he cares for. Doesn't have a family, far as I know. He's a rather queer fellow, keeps to himself. He even sits alone at the Cheshire Cheese.
And he's gone. And with that, I'm off to go talk to the inspector. Let me save. So in this game, there's a good chance that when you do something, it'll turn out to be useless. And in doing that useless thing, you missed a chance to do something vital. So I'm going to save the game frequently so that I can backtrack when and if I need to. And since in some case I might have to backtrack like a couple days, I won't show every single moment of that because this video would probably be 14 hours long if I did. But if I do cut something, I will make a note of it. Anywho, let's talk to the inspector.
Nasty business, this. A man stabbed in the back while making a call. Oliver tells me he was Johnson, Oliver's fellow reporter at the Morning Star. Obviously, this out-of-order sign was placed to conceal the crime. I expect we'll know more about the weapon after the inquest in Brighton tomorrow.
I don't think I need to know about you, so on to...
Not much I can tell you about Tracy. He was middle-aged, average height, dark-haired, mustachioed, well-dressed. Could be any of 1,000 blokes. I'm not sure what to make of Hemingway. He's always been on the up and up with Scotland Yard, yet it was he who directed Mr. Johnson to bring the weapon down to London rather than turning it into the Brighton police. Oliver certainly had motives for killing Johnson, what with their personal and professional rivalry. All the same, he seems most anxious to solve the mystery and isn't considered seriously as a suspect.
Yeah, I'm going to write that down. Make some notes here. So, Johnson and Oliver had a rivalry.
We haven't been able to connect Redmond with Mrs. Tracy. However, he was known to have it in for Johnson. If these murders prove separate, he is a most likely suspect for the Victoria case.
Okay, so there was bad blood between Redmond and Johnson, too. Let me make a note of that as well. And I still have some stuff to ask Smart about, so let me follow him. Okay, that's right, so people won't talk to you while they're moving to a location.
Miss Blackwood admits to have been somewhat irritated with Johnson's constant attention. However, murdering a tiresome suitor seems rather extreme, especially for an intelligent woman. Mr. Johnson was stabbed in the back when he was making a call at 10:15. He had found the weapon used in the Jumbles murder. I dare say that weapon was used on him as well. Johnson's pockets have been rifled, and any notes he may have made about the weapon or the Jumbles murder are missing.
But I have that note. And also, let me write that down. Johnson was murdered at 10:15.
Mrs. Tracy was stabbed in the back with an unidentified weapon that left a wound remarkably similar to that found on Mr. Johnson. She was leading a double life and, as so often happens, her mischief caught up with her.
Since I mentioned it, let me take a look at Johnson's note. Oh, did I forget to pick it up? I'd forget my own head if it wasn't nailed on. So remember that, folks. Pick up any evidence you find. Now let me look at it. Jumble's weapon, found in tree. Jade dagger, Medusa. Shop on B Street. Call Redmond from VS. Probably Victoria Station. I'm going to write down what this note says, too. Now, let me see if I have anything else to ask the inspector about.
I really doubt whether you have the least bit of sense. I was, of course, investigating these murders.
Oh, gee, sorry.
After I spent a good hour at the Jumbles on the Tracy murder, I went to Hove to interview Mr. Fisher.
Ooh, there's someone new I can ask about.
Fisher's got a jewelry shop on North Street in Brighton. The evidence against him is rather overwhelming. However, he's been able to account for his movements on the nights in question. Though he seems much too soft to be the murdering kind, if he slips up, we'll bag him.
And I do believe that's everything. Let me go check in with the boss and see what the next step is. Or should I just go to sleep? Nah, I'll talk to the boss. I like how even though it's almost 2 a.m., he's still sitting at his desk waiting for me.
Good work, Miss Anderson. Now go home and get some rest. I want you on the train to Brighton tomorrow morning. There's an inquest into that Jumbles murder at 11 a.m.
All right, time to hit the hay. Now, I could just go into the menu and click sleep, but there is one more thing I want to show you before I end this day. But first, let me save again. Taxi! So check this out, this made me laugh the first time I played this game. That's right, Dennis Oliver is my next door neighbor. And with that, to sleep, perchance to dream. You realize you've become very sleepy and cannot properly carry out your investigation in this state. You make your way home and fall quickly asleep. During the night you dreamt of stepping in a phone box and seeing a gloved hand bearing a gleaming blade arcing above you. You are awakened by the ringing phone. It's Mr. Rightwell who shouts,
"What makes you think I'll pay you for sleeping?"
Okay, so that concludes the first and probably shortest day of the investigation. I'm going to call it here. I think this video would be too long if I played the whole game beginning to end, so I'm just going to chop it up by each day. But before I end this video, I want to go over what we learned today. 1. Geraldine Tracy was murdered on Saturday evening. Johnson was murdered Monday night around 10:15 with the same weapon. 2. Johnson found the weapon used in both murders in the hollow of a tree near Tracy's house. 3. Johnson's boss Hemingway told him to bring the weapon to him rather than hand it over to the police. 4. Motives. Tracy was having an affair with another man, so she was possibly killed by her angry husband. Johnson had rivalries with 2 different men at the paper. Oliver was upset that Johnson got the Jumbles case over him, and also Johnson appears to have been interested in Oliver's girlfriend, Blackwood. We don't know what Redmond's problem with Johnson was yet. 5. Tomorrow at 11 there will be an inquest into the Jumbles murder, and hopefully we'll find more clues there. Thank you for watching my video. Hopefully you check out the next installment when it comes out. Be safe out there.